Your child comes home and something went wrong. A bad grade, they weren't invited to the party, they're furious at their sibling, and you do what every loving parent does. You sit with them, you name the emotion, you let them be in the experience, you hold space and you wait for it to pass. And sometimes that works. They cry it out, they move on, and by dinner it's forgotten. But sometimes it doesn't pass. Sometimes it keeps them stuck. And you're left there wondering, did I do something wrong? Is there something more I should be doing? That's exactly what we're going to talk about today. Think about your own day for a second. You have a deadline at work. The house is a complete mess. You're worried about one child. 3 different situations, 3 different feelings that come up. But here's the thing, the situation isn't actually what creates the feeling. It's the story you tell yourself about it that does. The interpretation. And that interpretation is completely subjective, which means it's something we have control over. And that's exactly what we want to work on with our kids. Now, validating emotions is important. Helping your child feel seen is important. Don't hear me saying otherwise. When your child is hurting, the first thing they need to know is that you're there with them, that their experience matters, that they're not alone in it. But we want to take it a step further, because here's what most parents don't realize. We don't have a direct way to influence how our kids feel when they face a challenge. You can't reach in and change the emotion. You can't talk them out of feeling hurt or disappointed or left out. But you do have enormous influence over something else, over the way that they interpret what happened to them. And interpretation is everything, because the way your child makes sense of a situation, the story they tell themselves about what it means, that's what creates the feeling in the first place. So when you stay in the validation moment, which is important, but you never move past it, you're missing the most powerful tool we have. You're stopping right before the step that actually changes something. And that step is gently helping your children see the situation through a different lens. Not a fake, toxic positivity lens, a real one that's also true, but that they can't see yet themselves because they're flooded with emotions. That's what takes parenting to the next level. Not just making your child feel seen, but helping them see differently. I'm going to break this down for you step by step. But first, I want to share the spiritual wisdom behind it. Because when you understand where this is coming from, the whole approach is going to land very differently. According to ancient Jewish wisdom, emotions are a type of life force. We have other life forces inside of us, our intellect, our will, for example, but emotions are one of the strongest ones. They are powerful, they are real, and they carry genuine energy. But here's the thing about that energy. When it runs through us, uncontained, unintegrated, it becomes negative. It overwhelms us. It takes over everything else. The hurt crowds out the thinking. The rage crowds out the perspective. The jealousy crowds out the love. And suddenly your child isn't experiencing an emotion. They are the emotion. It's all that there is for them. This is what ancient Kabbalistic wisdom describes as a light without a vessel. Think of it this way. Electricity is powerful and real, but without the right cable to contain it, it doesn't power anything. It just burns. It destroys everything that it's meant to fuel. Emotions work the same way. The feeling itself, the hurt, the disappointment, the anger, there is real life force there. There is something in your child that wants to matter, that wants things to be right, that wants to be seen. That's not bad. That's actually beautiful. The problem is never the light. The problem is when there is no vessel to hold that light. So what is the vessel? In this framework, the vessel is the interpretation. It's the way we make sense of what happened, the meaning we give to the situation. When we help our child see the situation differently, when we gently offer a new perspective, a wider frame, a different question, we are not dimming the emotion. We are building a vessel strong enough to hold it. And when that happens, the energy doesn't overwhelm the child. It moves through them in a contained, integrated way. It becomes something they can actually use. That is the whole idea. Light needs a vessel. Emotion needs interpretation. And as parents, we are the ones who help build that vessel until our child is old enough to build it themselves. Have you ever noticed that the more you talked about the feeling with your child, the more intense it got? That's the light with no vessel. Drop a yes in the comments below if this resonates. Now, before we continue, I wanted to stop for a minute and share with you that I'm starting a new 10-part class that is going to dive deeper into the forces of our soul and break down how each one of them works and how by understanding that and learning that, we can help our children and ourselves navigate challenges that come up in our life. This program is based on the wisdom that comes from the Kabbalistic perspective of the 10 Sfirot, which are the 10 ways that our soul emanates the body. It's very spiritual wisdom, but at the same time, very, very practical and real. So if you want to join me for that, you can check out all the details in the link below. I hope to see you there. So let me show you exactly what this looks like in real life. I'm going to walk you through 3 different situations every parent faces and the exact move that changes everything. The first example is that your child comes home with a bad grade. And in that moment, you have a few options. You could get upset yourself and express your disappointment, let them know that this is not acceptable. And sometimes there is a place for that. Or you could do what many conscious parents try to do, sit with them, validate, make them feel seen. And that comes from a real and loving place. But here's the third option, one that doesn't dismiss the feeling and doesn't ignore it, but for just a moment gently puts it to the side. Give them a minute to feel it. Don't push past it and acknowledge that you see them. Acknowledge that you understand what they feel. Yeah, that's disappointing. And then gently you shift, because here's the reframe that changes everything. The grade is not the problem. The grade is just a signal. It's telling you that somewhere something wasn't aligned. The preparation, the understanding, maybe something is going on emotionally that week. It's information. That's all that it is. The moment you help your child see it that way, you've just given them their power back. So you ask, what do you wish had happened differently? Why do you think it didn't go the way that you wanted? Not to make them feel worse, to help them look at reality clearly instead of collapsing under it, to get the mind back online. And then this is the move. Okay, so what do we do now? That question does something profound. It tells your child you are not a victim of this result. You have the next move. You always have a choice. Reality didn't happen to you. It happened for you to show you exactly where to go next. And I know that some of you are thinking right now, isn't this dismissing their emotions? Isn't this not seeing them? No, we did give it a minute. We did acknowledge the emotion, but we didn't let it define the whole situation. Because a child who learns to collapse under every disappointment, that becomes a pattern. That becomes an adult who avoids challenges because failure feels fatal. What we're building instead is a child who feels it, looks at it clearly, and asks, what do I do next? That is emotional maturity, and it can start being built today. When you face a setback, do you tend to sit in the feeling or move towards the next action? Because this is something we model our kids, whether we realize it or not. Tell me down in the comments below. The next example is one that hits even closer to home, because it touches something every child is desperate for, the feeling of belonging. And how we respond in that moment can either ground them in who they are or make them dependent on what others tell them. Your child finds out they weren't invited to a party. The story in their head can go something like this. Nobody likes me. I don't belong. Something is wrong with me. Give them a minute. This one really hurts. Don't minimize it. Don't try to fix it. Just be with them for a moment. But as soon as there is an opening, here's where it gets important. You don't go deeper into the feeling. You gently bring in their mind. Can you tell me what exactly happened? And then you can ask them, who are the people who actually know you? Who always shows up for you? Let them focus on the friends that they do have and not the ones that don't want to be their friend. Let them see that they are already a part of something that is meaningful, a deeper friendship that they have, part of your family, where they feel that sense of belonging. So they will remember who they really are, because the story they're telling themselves has gone way beyond the facts. The fact is, they weren't invited to this specific event by this particular group of people on this particular day. That's it. That's actually what happened. Everything else, nobody likes me, I don't belong, something is wrong with me, that's not reality. That's just not true. That's that light without a vessel. That's the emotion flooding in without the mind to contain it. So you help them separate the event from the identity. This tells you something about this situation. It doesn't tell you anything about who you are. You're not pretending the hurt isn't real. You're refusing to let a single social event write the story of who your child is. You're teaching them that reality, even painful reality, is information. It shows them where to invest, where to redirect, and what actually matters. A child who learns this doesn't crumble under rejection. They get curious about it. They stay grounded in themselves, even when the social world is unpredictable. And in that teen and tween stages, where everything depends on who's included and who's not, that is an enormous gift you can give to your child. The third example is one that I want you to pay the most attention to, because this emotion, if you feed it, doesn't just affect the moment. It quietly shapes how your child sees themselves relative to everyone around them for years. Your child is furious that their sibling got something they didn't. The recognition, the opportunity, the win, and the story they have in their mind is that it's not fair. They always get everything. You love them more. Give it a minute. Normalize it without amplifying it. Of course, part of you wishes that were you. That's a very human feeling. But then, as soon as you can, you bring in the mind, because jealousy is one of the most powerful emotions that needs a vessel. Left unchecked, it doesn't just make your child feel bad in the moment, it trains them to measure their worth entirely by comparison. And that is a very painful way to live. So here's the reframe that you want to make for your child. Let's talk about what's happening in your world right now. What are you building that's yours? You're pulling their attention out of their siblings' lane and putting it back in their own. And that's not a distraction technique, it's the deeper truth. Reality isn't telling your child that they lost. Reality is telling them, here is something worth wanting. Now, what does this tell you about what you care about? And what do you want to do about that? The feeling of jealousy, when you give it a vessel through the mind, can actually become a compass. It points at something your child desires, and a desire directed well becomes motivation. What would it look like if you worked towards something like that yourself? Now you've taken an emotion that was pulling them into victimhood and comparison and turned it into a question about their own path, their own choices, and their own next move. That is the shift from why do they have everything to what do I want to build for myself. And the emotion that opens up on the other side, eventually, maybe not immediately, but eventually is genuine joy for someone else's success. Because a child who is grounded in their own path doesn't need to diminish someone else's. This is a sophisticated emotional skill, and it starts with one conversation at the kitchen table. Tell me in the comments below, has jealousy ever shown up in your house between your kids? How did you handle it? There are no perfect answers here. I would just really love to know. So let's bring it all together. The wisdom is this. You are not helping your child by giving every emotion equal weight. Some emotions, when fed too much attention, grow into patterns that follow them for life. The kid who can't handle failure becomes an adult who avoids challenges. The child who crumbles at rejection becomes the teenager who can't hold their own identity. Your job in those moments is not to sit inside the flood with them. Your job is to be the vessel, the steady mind, while theirs is still developing. To offer the wider frame, to help them practice moving through an emotion, not setting up a camp inside it. And you do that by remembering 3 things. 1. Give the feeling a moment. It deserves to be seen. 2. Watch for the opening and gently bring in the mind. 3. Help them see that reality is always giving them information and they always have the next move. That reality is happening for them and not to them. That's it. That's it. That's the whole framework. Try this week in one real situation and see what changes. Not just in your child, but in the conversation itself. If this episode resonated with you, share it with one parent who needs to hear this, because this stuff doesn't get taught everywhere, and it should. And if you want to learn more about how to know which emotions you should validate and which ones you shouldn't, check out this episode right here. I'll see you there.